I found out my best friend married my ex-fiance the same week she asked me to help plan her baby shower. She had been married to him for 7 months. 7 months of sitting across from me at brunch. 7 months of phone calls where she asked how I was healing. 7 months of looking me in the eyes and saying she was so sorry things had not worked out for me. The wedding photos were hidden in a shared Google Drive folder she had accidentally given me access to. And the very first photo I saw was the two of them at an altar, her in a white dress, him in a gray suit, smiling the way people smile when they think nobody who matters is watching. I sat on my bathroom floor for 40 minutes, not crying, not screaming, just staring at the tile, because everything that had felt like bad luck suddenly felt like a plan. Before I tell you everything, and I mean everything because this story goes so much deeper than one secret wedding, I want to ask you something real. If the person who held your hand through the worst heartbreak of your life was the one who caused it, would you want the truth? Or would you rather have kept the version where you were just unlucky in love? Stay with me, because Bella had to decide that same question, and her answer changed everything. I want to start at the end of something, because that is where this story really begins. His name was Daniel. We had been together for 4 years. We got engaged on a Tuesday night in November, not some grand romantic gesture, just the two of us eating takeout on the couch, and he pulled the ring out of a shoebox, and I laughed because I thought he was joking, and then I realized he was not joking, and I said yes without even putting down my chopsticks. It was the most us thing that had ever happened, and I loved it. I was 27, he was 29. We had an apartment together, a dog together, a future together that I had spent a lot of quiet evenings imagining in detail. I knew what our kids would look like. I knew what city we would grow old in. I had already picked out the font for our wedding invitations, which I know sounds like a small thing, but it tells you how certain I was. And then, about 8 months into our engagement, things started to change. He started working late. Not every night, but enough nights that it became a pattern I noticed. He became quieter, not cold exactly, but like someone who had turned the volume down on everything that had once been warm between us. I asked him once, maybe around the 5-month mark of noticing it, whether he was okay, whether we were okay. He said yes. He said he was just under a lot of pressure at work. He held my hand when he said it and looked me directly in the eye, and I believed him because I had no reason not to. I had known this man for 5 years. I trusted him the way you trust someone when you have built something real with them. 6 weeks later, he ended our engagement. He did not do it cruelly. I want to be honest about that. He sat me down on a Sunday afternoon and told me he was not in the right place, that he was not ready, that I deserved someone who could show up fully, and he did not feel like he could do that right now. He cried a little. I cried a lot. We sat together for 2 hours just quietly falling apart, and when he left, he took the dog, which was technically his dog from before we met, and I sat alone in an apartment that suddenly felt like it belonged to a different version of my life. My best friend Mara showed up that same evening with wine and takeout and one of those thick knit blankets that are too soft to be practical. She sat on my couch and let me talk for 4 hours. She said all the right things. She told me Daniel had no idea what he was giving up. She told me I was going to be okay. She told me some people are just not brave enough for the love they are offered, and that his loss was going to become someone else's fortune one day. She was so warm that night, so present. She held my hand when I started to spiral into the question of what I had done wrong, and she stopped me and said firmly that this was not about me, that some things just end, that I had done nothing wrong. I believed her. I moved out of the apartment 3 weeks later. Daniel and I agreed to sell the furniture. He kept the dog. I kept the deposit money. We did not speak much after that. It was not a dramatic split. It was just the quiet ache of something that had once been everything becoming nothing very quickly. Mara was there through all of it, every step, every bad week. Every morning I woke up and felt the exact shape of everything I had lost. She checked in on me constantly. She brought me coffee on her way to work. She made sure I was eating. She took me to a yoga class once, which I hated, but I appreciated that she tried. For about 6 months, I was in what I can only describe as a low-level grief. Not dramatic, not falling apart publicly, just that dull, constant awareness that something important was gone. And then I started to feel better. It was slow, the way real healing is slow. I started cooking again. I started making plans again. I got a promotion at work that I had been chasing for 2 years. I repainted my apartment. I bought new curtains. I told Mara one evening over dinner that I finally felt like myself again, and she reached across the table and squeezed my hand and said she was so glad. She looked genuinely relieved. About 4 months after that evening, Mara told me she had met someone. She was glowing when she told me. Literally glowing, the way people look when they are in the earliest, most electric stage of something new. She said he was wonderful, kind, smart, a little quiet but in a good way. She said she had never felt this comfortable with someone so quickly. She said it felt easy. I told her I was thrilled for her, and I was, genuinely. Mara had been single for a long time. She had talked for years about wanting a partner, wanting a family, wanting that specific kind of settled love. I was happy she had found it. She did not tell me his name right away. She said she wanted to keep it private for a while, that she had a habit of talking things to death before they had a chance to breathe, and she was trying something new. I understood that, or I thought I understood it. She showed me one photo about 3 weeks later. It was a picture of his hand holding hers across a restaurant table. Just hands. She said she was not ready to show his face yet because she was superstitious like that and did not want to jinx anything. I laughed. I told her she was ridiculous. She laughed too. I did not push it. She was my best friend. I trusted her. 3 months passed. She still had not told me his name. She still had not shown me a clear photo of his face. She talked about him constantly. Every detail she gave me confirmed that things were serious, and yet every time I asked something too specific, she redirected. I noticed it vaguely, the way you notice a pattern without quite naming it. I told myself she was just private. She had always been a little private about relationships. And then she told me she was pregnant. She was 9 weeks along. She had known for a few weeks but wanted to wait to tell people. She was happy, nervous, excited, and a little overwhelmed all at once. I was the first person she told. I hugged her and told her this was wonderful and that I would be there for everything, whatever she needed. She asked me to help plan her baby shower. I said yes without a second thought. She was my best friend. Of course I would plan her shower. Over the next 2 weeks I threw myself into it. I made a shared Google Drive folder for us where I could keep all the vendor information, decorating ideas, guest lists, food options, and budget spreadsheets organized. I shared it with her. She gave me access to a few things on her end, some photos she had saved of table setups she liked, a guest list she had started. I was sitting at my kitchen table on a Wednesday evening, clicking through the folder to add a new catering quote I had just received, when I saw a subfolder I had not noticed before. It had a name that looked like a date, a specific date. I almost did not click it. But I did. Inside were 43 photos. The first one I saw was a wide shot of a small ceremony, maybe 30 guests, an outdoor venue with white flowers and string lights, a bride in a simple, fitted white dress, a groom in a gray suit. I did not recognize the bride immediately because the shot was from a distance. But I recognized the groom immediately. It was Daniel. I sat very still for a long time, the kind of still where your brain is working very hard and your body just stops. I clicked to the next photo, and the next, and the next. Closer shots now, her face fully visible. Laughing, crying happy tears, exchanging rings, dancing, cutting cake, holding each other on a dance floor. Mara and Daniel married. The timestamp on the photos was 7 months ago. 7 months ago, Mara and Daniel had gotten married in a private ceremony. 7 months ago, while I was still in what I called my healing season. 7 months ago, while she was sitting across from me at brunch asking how I was doing. My hands did not shake. My eyes did not fill with tears. I felt something very cold and very clear move through me from my chest outward, the way ice water feels when it reaches your empty stomach. I closed the folder, I closed my laptop, I sat on the bathroom floor. I did not go to the bathroom floor for some dramatic reason. I just walked there on automatic and sat down because it was cool and quiet, and somehow it felt like the right place to process something that did not have a right place to be processed. I sat there for 40 minutes. And what I was doing during those 40 minutes was not breaking down. What I was doing was remembering things. Specifically, I was going back through every conversation I'd had with Mara over the past year and a half, and I was looking at all of it through this new lens. And what I saw was not confusion. What I saw was a pattern so clear and so deliberate that I felt genuinely stunned by how long I had missed it. I thought about how she had never told me his name, how she had only ever shown me the back of his hand, how every time I asked something specific, she changed the subject, how when I said I was finally feeling better, she looked relieved, how she had waited to tell me she was pregnant, how she asked me to plan a baby shower for a baby whose father she had still technically never introduced to me. She had never needed me to not know his name. She had needed me not to ask. And I had been so busy healing that I had never pushed. I had trusted her, because she was my best friend, because she had held my hand on the worst night of my life, because I had believed, completely and without question, that she was on my side. I went back to my laptop that night and looked more carefully at the photos. I was not looking for pain anymore. I was looking for information. There was a guest list visible in one photo, pinned to a corkboard in what looked like a venue office. Not all of it was readable, but I could make out some names. Names from Mara's side of the world, and 3 names I recognized from Daniel's side. His brother, his college roommate, his cousin. None of them were people I had been close to. None of them would have had reason to tell me. I looked at the venue in the background of several photos. I could see part of a logo on a sign near the entrance. I spent about 20 minutes doing some careful searching online and found the venue. It was a small private estate about 90 minutes outside the city. Not a venue that would have advertised a celebrity wedding. Not a venue anyone would stumble across. This had been planned carefully. I went to sleep that night having made exactly one decision. I was not going to react immediately. I was not going to call Mara. I was not going to send an angry message. I was not going to do anything that would give her the chance to control the narrative before I understood the full shape of what had happened. I needed more information, and I needed time to think clearly. The next morning I called in a personal day at work. I made coffee. I sat at my table with a notebook, which is what I do when I need to think in straight lines, and I started writing down every single thing I knew and every question I still needed to answer. What I knew, Mara and Daniel had been secretly married for 7 months. She was now pregnant. She had asked me to plan her baby shower. She had never told me the father's name. She had not told me they were together. She had not told me they were engaged. She had not told me they were married. What I did not know, when exactly their relationship had started, whether it had started while Daniel and I were still together, whether Mara had been involved in the end of my engagement, what she wanted from me now, whether Daniel knew she had given me access to those photos. That last question stopped me. Had she given me access to those photos on purpose? I went back to the folder and looked at the structure again. She had shared the root folder with me for the shower planning. The wedding photos were in a subfolder inside that root. She would have had to either know they were there or carelessly left them where I could find them. Mara was not a careless person. She organized her digital life meticulously. She was the person who color-coded her calendar and labeled every saved file by date and category. She had known they were there. But why would she want me to find them this way? Why not just tell me? Unless she did not want to tell me, unless she wanted me to find it and then she could react, rather than confess. Unless she was tired of the secret and this was her way of letting it escape without having to say the words. I put that theory aside. I had a more important question to answer first. I needed to know when their relationship had started. I started going back through my memory with more care than I had been applying. I thought about the last months of my engagement. I thought about the changes I had noticed in Daniel, the working late, the distance, the way he had ended things. He had told me he was not ready, that he could not show up fully. He had cried when he said it. I thought about how quickly Mara had shown up that night. She had been there within 2 hours of Daniel leaving, which was fast, even for a best friend. I had not called her right away. I had called her about 40 minutes after Daniel left. She said she was already nearby, that she had been running an errand in my neighborhood. I had never thought twice about that detail until this moment. I looked back through my phone. I am the kind of person who saves text messages longer than most people do. I still had messages going back. 2 years, I started reading. I found something that made my stomach drop. About 5 weeks before Daniel ended our engagement, Mara had sent me a text asking if Daniel and I had any plans that Saturday. I had told her no, that Daniel was working. She had said she might stop by then and drop off something she had borrowed. She never did stop by. 2 days after that text exchange, Daniel had started behaving differently. The distance had started around there. The quietness. That was not proof. I knew it was not proof, but it was a thread. I kept looking. I found another exchange, about 3 weeks before the breakup, where Mara had asked me, very casually, in the middle of a long conversation about something else entirely, whether Daniel and I had been fighting. I had said no. She had said, "Good, you two seem so solid," and then moved on. Solid, that word sat in my chest like a stone. She had been checking the temperature of my relationship, testing how aware I was, seeing whether I had noticed anything. I closed my phone. I took a long breath. I was not going to spiral. I was going to be methodical. I was going to gather what I could gather before I did anything. I reached out to someone I knew who had stayed in loose contact with Daniel's circle after the breakup. Her name was Claire, a former coworker of Daniel's who I had gotten along with well. I did not tell her what I had found. I kept it casual. I mentioned I had been thinking about old times and asked how she was. We had a brief, friendly exchange, and in the middle of it I mentioned that I had heard through the grapevine that Daniel had gotten married. I kept it light. Almost gossipy. Claire took the bait. She said yes, it had been very sudden. Small ceremony. She said she had only found out because Daniel's brother had mentioned it in passing at a work event she had also attended. She said Daniel had been very private about it. She said she thought his new wife was someone who had been in his life for a while before they went public. In his life for a while before they went public. I thanked Claire and moved on. I did not give her anything she could take back to anyone. But now I had a new piece of information. Mara had been in Daniel's life for a while before they went public. That phrase had come from Daniel's side, not Mara's. That meant it was likely his framing, his explanation, which meant it was probably the truth as he understood it. In his life for a while, long enough that a casual connection of his had picked up on that detail. I sat very still for a long time after that phone call, and I let myself feel, for just a few minutes, the full weight of what I was now fairly certain had happened. My engagement had not just fallen apart. My engagement had been dismantled, while I was in it, by someone who was also my best friend. And then that same person had held me through the grief of it while already being involved with the man who had caused it. She had held my hand, while knowing. I let myself feel that for 5 minutes, and then I put it away, because I still had work to do. The baby shower was 3 weeks out. Mara trusted me to plan it. She was not hiding from me yet because she did not know I had found the photos, and that was an advantage I was not going to waste. I did not cancel the shower. I kept planning it. I kept responding to her messages about colors and food and guest lists. I kept being the Bella she expected me to be, warm, reliable, thorough, a little detail-obsessed. I kept all of it going while I quietly did everything else I needed to do. The first thing I needed to do was talk to someone I trusted completely. Not about the emotional side. About the practical side. I called my older cousin Diana, who worked in family law. I did not lay out the whole story right away. I asked her some general questions. About how a secret marriage might affect someone close to the couple if they had financial entanglements. About whether a person had any legal standing in situations involving deception by a close friend. Diana was careful and professional with her answers, but she also asked me at the end of the call whether this was hypothetical. I told her it was not. She made time for me to come in the following week. In the meantime, I kept gathering. I went back through my memories of the last year and a half with fresh eyes. I thought about every time Mara had redirected a conversation. Every time she had asked about Daniel in a way that felt slightly off. Every time she had been a little too eager to reassure me that I was better off. Every time she had encouraged me, gently, to focus on myself and not look back. She had been managing me, not out of love, out of strategy. There was one moment in particular that kept coming back to me. About 8 months after Daniel and I broke up, Mara had suggested we do a full social media cleanse. She said it was for my healing. She encouraged me to unfollow and mute anyone associated with Daniel. She helped me go through my accounts and clear things out. At the time, I had felt cared for. I had felt like she was helping me move forward. What she had actually been doing was making sure I would not accidentally see anything that would tell me the truth. I had deleted my connection to Daniel's entire network because she told me it would help me heal, and it had helped her hide. I went to see Diana. I brought the screenshots I had taken of the wedding photos. I brought the printed text exchanges. I brought everything I had written in my notebook. Diana listened to all of it without interrupting. When I finished, she said, very calmly, that this was a genuinely unusual situation, but that there were some specific things worth being aware of from a practical standpoint. She pointed out that I had planned significant expenses for Mara's baby shower. I had put a deposit on a catering company. I had booked a venue space at a local restaurant. I had bought decorations. I had done all of this because Mara was my best friend and I had assumed I was doing it out of love. But the relationship I was doing it in the context of was one that had been built on deception. And there was a question of what I was going to do with the knowledge I now had. Diana told me I had options. I could confront Mara before the shower. I could withdraw from the shower planning and simply step away without explanation. I could confront Mara and Daniel together. I could take more time, confirm more details, and decide from a position of full information. She told me that whatever I decided, I should document everything. The photos, the texts, the timeline, the expenses I had already paid out. I already had all of it. I left Diana's office feeling, for the first time since finding those photos, like I had ground under my feet. The baby shower was 2 weeks away when something new happened. Mara's mother called me. Her mother, Ruth, was a woman I had known for a long time. She was warm and a little formal, and she had always liked me. She was calling to tell me how much she appreciated that I was helping plan the shower. She said Mara was lucky to have a friend like me. She said it was so good that I had adjusted so gracefully to everything. I paused. Adjusted to everything. I asked Ruth what she meant. I kept my voice light, curious, not alarmed. Ruth hesitated for just a moment too long. And then she said, "Oh, just everything that happened, with the changes." She laughed a little nervously. I told her, of course, and I moved the conversation along. But that word, adjusted, sat in my chest like a splinter, because Ruth had used it like it meant something specific, like there was a specific something to adjust to. Which meant Ruth knew. Ruth, Mara's mother, knew the truth, and she had been operating around me knowing that I did not know, which meant she had been complicit in the same silence. I thought about who else knew. I started thinking about all the people in Mara's world who had interacted with me over the past year. Her sister, her colleagues, her mother, any of Daniel's people I had crossed paths with. Had they all been watching me not know? Had they been careful around me the way people are careful around someone who is being protected from a truth? That thought was almost worse than the betrayal itself. The number of people who had managed around my ignorance, who had smiled at me, who had accepted my help planning this shower, who had watched me perform friendship for someone who had already taken everything. I sat with that for a full day. And then I made my decision. I was not going to explode. I was not going to create a public scene. I was not going to send an angry message in the middle of the night that she could screenshot and reframe as me being unstable. I was not going to give her the chaos she would know how to manage. I was going to be very, very calm, and I was going to give her the truth at a time and in a way that she could not control. The week before the shower, I made a private appointment with the catering company and the venue. I explained that there had been a change of plans, and I needed to understand the cancellation policy. I reviewed what was recoverable. The venue had a partial refund clause. The catering deposit was non-refundable, but the remaining balance had not yet been paid. I protected what I could. Then I reached out to 3 women on the shower guest list. All 3 of them were mutual friends of Mara's and mine. Women who I had genuine, independent friendships with, and who I trusted to be honest. I did not tell any of them what I had found. I simply had three separate, natural conversations in which I mentioned, casually, that I was realizing Mara and her partner had been together for longer than she had initially let on. In each conversation, I watched for a reaction. Two of the three had no reaction that told me anything. They seemed genuinely unaware. The third one paused just long enough. Her name was Jen. She was someone I had known through Mara for about 3 years. She paused, and then she said something that she clearly tried to make sound casual. Oh, you know how Mara is. She always waits until things are solid before she talks about them. That pause was everything. Jen knew something, maybe not all of it, but something. I told Jen I appreciated that, and I moved on. I filed the information away. The day before the shower, Mara called me to go over final details. She was excited. She sounded happy. She asked whether I needed any help setting up. She said Daniel was going to drop her off and pick her up after. She said his name so easily, just like that, like it was nothing, like it was a name I had never attached to any feeling. I told her everything was handled. I told her to just show up and enjoy it. She said, Bella, I really don't know what I would do without you. I said, I know. After I hung up, I sat quietly for a long time. And I thought about the fact that she had planned to use me to celebrate a baby conceived with a man I had been engaged to, a man I had loved, a man she had helped take away from me, and she had felt comfortable enough to say that she did not know what she would do without me. That told me something important. It told me that in her mind, whatever guilt she carried, she had filed it somewhere manageable. She had decided that my forgiveness was already won, that the warmth I showed her was confirmation that everything was settled, that I had moved past it and so should she. She had mistaken my grace for ignorance. She was about to find out they were very different things. The shower happened on a Saturday afternoon. The restaurant space looked beautiful. 12 women gathered around Mara, who sat at the center of it in a soft floral dress, glowing with the particular kind of happiness that comes when you feel completely safe, which she did. She felt completely safe. I was warm and present the entire time. I refilled drinks. I organized the gift opening. I smiled at all the right moments. I was a perfect host. At no point did I give her any indication that anything was different. After the gifts were opened and the cake was cut, and the guests were saying their goodbyes, Mara pulled me into a long hug. She whispered in my ear that this was the most special day she had had in a long time, and that she was so grateful I was in her life. I hugged her back. I told her she deserved everything she had. And I meant that, not warmly, but accurately. After the last guest left and we were alone in the restaurant space, I sat down across from her at one of the tables, and I put my phone face up between us. On the screen was one of the wedding photos, the one of them at the altar, clear, unmistakable. I did not say anything, I just watched her face. She went very still. The color changed in her cheeks. Her eyes moved from the phone to my face and back to the phone. She said my name. She said it the way people say a name when they are buying time. I told her she did not need to explain anything right now. I told her I already knew most of it. I told her that I had known for a few weeks, and that I had chosen to wait until today because I had promised her a beautiful shower, and I had kept that promise, which was more than she had ever kept for me. She started to cry. She said she had been meaning to tell me. She said it had all happened so fast. She said she had not known how. I told her I had one question. Just one. And I needed her to answer it honestly, maybe for the first time since I had known her as an adult. I asked her when it started. She cried harder. She said she had not meant for it to happen. I told her that was not my question. My question was when. She said it had started before he ended things with me, that it had started slowly, that she had not planned it. She had not planned it, slowly, before he ended things. I nodded. I picked up my phone and put it in my bag. I stood up. I told her I hoped the shower had been everything she needed because it was the last thing I was going to give her. I told her I wished the baby a healthy, happy life because the baby had done nothing wrong. I told her that I had loved her genuinely for a long time, and that was exactly what made this what it was. She reached for my hand. She said, "Bella, please." She said she was sorry. She said she needed me. I looked at her hand on my arm and then back at her face and I said, "I know you do." And I stepped back. I walked out of the restaurant. Not fast, not dramatically. Just out into the afternoon light, and I got in my car and I drove home. I will not pretend that I did not cry on that drive. I did. I cried the way you cry when something that has been pressing against you for weeks finally has room to release. Not angry tears, not grief exactly, just the body letting go of something heavy it has been holding for a long time. When I got home, I sat at my kitchen table, and I penned my notebook and I wrote down 3 things I was going to do in the following week. Simple things, clean things. The first was to write a letter to 3 of the mutual friends I trusted most and tell them, briefly and factually, what had happened. Not a dramatic exposé, not a campaign for their sympathy, just the truth in clean language so they had an accurate picture if anyone asked them. Because Mara would talk, and I wanted the truth to have already arrived before her version did. The second was to formally request the refund from the venue and document the baby shower expenses and send Mara an invoice. Not a furious demand. A clean, professional invoice for the deposits I had paid out of my own pocket for her event. Itemized. Specific. The third was to call Diana and close the loop on everything I had documented, just to make sure I had protected myself fully and that nothing I had done could be used against me. The letter to the mutual friends went out that Sunday. I kept it factual. I told them what I had discovered when I had discovered it, how I had handled it, and what I had decided. I told them I was not asking them to choose sides. I was only asking them to have accurate information. I told them I wished Mara well from a distance and that I was done. 2 of the 3 responded quickly. One had not known anything and was genuinely stunned and angry on my behalf. One had known more than I expected and wrote me a long, painful message of apology for her own silence. Both of them said they were there for me. Jen did not respond until 2 days later. When she did, she was careful. She said she had known something was going on but had not known the full extent. She said she had been in an impossible position. She said she hoped I could understand. I told her I could understand it. I also told her that the next time she found herself watching someone be deceived by a person she claimed to be close to, she might consider that the impossible position was actually simpler than it felt. She did not respond to that. Mara received the invoice on a Tuesday. I sent it by email with a read receipt. I watched it open. She called me 18 minutes later. I did not answer. I let her leave a voicemail. She said she was shocked that I was doing this. She said she understood I was hurt, but this felt punitive. She said she wanted to talk and work through it. She said this was not the Bella she knew. I listened to the voicemail twice. I replied by text with 2 sentences. I said that I wished her and her family well and that the invoice was for real expenses I had paid on her behalf. I said I would appreciate payment by the end of the month. She called again that evening. I did not answer. Daniel called me 3 days later. I had not spoken to him since our breakup. The call came from a number I did not have saved but recognized. I stared at the screen for 4 rings and then I declined it. He did not leave a voicemail. That silence was its own kind of answer. He had nothing to say that was worth saying. He had called, probably at Mara's urging, to do some kind of damage control or to make some kind of appeal. But without the ability to speak to me, he had nothing. I felt very little about that call, which told me something important about where I actually was, emotionally, compared to where I had been 2 years before when this man's absence had felt like the ground disappearing beneath me. The mutual friend who had been angry on my behalf, her name was Priya. She reached out to tell me that Mara had been in contact with her. She said Mara was telling people that I had discovered the relationship and had reacted in a way that was out of proportion, that I was struggling emotionally and needed support but was refusing to accept it, that she was worried about me. I asked Priya if she believed that version. Priya said no. She said she had known me long enough to know that I was one of the most emotionally steady people she had ever met, and that if I had walked away from something, I had walked away from it with clear eyes. I thanked her. I did not ask her to do anything on my behalf. I did not want anyone fighting for me. I had done what I needed to do. I just needed to let things settle. The invoice was paid 2 weeks later. Not with a message, not with an apology, just a bank transfer with no note. I looked at it. I saved the confirmation. I moved on. About a month after the shower, Mara's sister reached out to me. Her name was Lena, and she was 2 years younger than Mara. I had always liked Lena, who was more direct and less polished than her sister, and who had always seemed slightly more honest. Lena told me she was reaching out because she thought I deserved to hear from someone in Mara's family who actually understood the weight of what had happened. She said she had argued with Mara about it. She said she had told Mara, back when it started, that what she was doing was wrong. She said Mara had told her it was complicated, and that feelings were not always rational, and that she could not help when something became real. Lena said she had watched the whole thing unfold and had felt sick about it, and had not known how to reach me without making things worse. She said she was sorry. She said she meant it. I believed her. I thanked her. I told her that her apology actually mattered to me more than she probably knew, not because it changed anything, but because it confirmed that my read on the situation had been right, that it had been wrong, that even the people who loved Mara had known it was wrong. Lena said one more thing before we got off the phone. She said that Mara was not sleeping well, that the pregnancy had made everything feel more urgent and more fragile, and that Mara was carrying a guilt she could not put down, that she talked about me sometimes and always stopped short of saying what she actually wanted to say. I asked Lena what she thought Mara wanted to say. Lena was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I think she wants to say she is sorry in a way that makes you come back, and I think she knows those are not the same thing. I thanked Lena. I told her she was welcome to stay in touch if she wanted to. She said she would like that. 3 months after the shower, I got a card in the mail, no return address. Inside was a handwritten note. The handwriting was Mara's. It said 3 things. It said, I was wrong. It said, I knew I was wrong while it was happening and I chose to keep going. It said, I do not expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I know. I read it twice. I held it for a while. I put it in a drawer. It was not enough to rebuild what had been lost, but it was the only honest thing she had ever given me in 2 years, and I was not going to throw it away. I thought about what it meant that she had written it after the baby was born, after the crisis had passed, after she had some distance from the immediate mess of being caught. I thought about whether it was genuine or strategic. I thought about it for a couple of days, and then I decided it did not matter which it was. What mattered was that she had named the truth, deliberately, in her own words, without asking for anything in return. That was something. Not everything, but something. I filed it under the category of things that are true that do not change outcomes, and I kept moving. 6 months after everything happened, my life looked different in ways I had not anticipated. Some of the differences were losses. The friendship that had been my most central one was gone. A whole network of shared social connections had shifted or scattered. I had spent money I had not planned to spend. I had held a truth by myself for weeks that no one should have to hold alone. But some of the differences were gains. The grief I had carried for the end of my engagement, the grief I had believed was just about losing Daniel, turned out to be lighter than I had thought once I understood the full story. Because a significant portion of that grief had been confusion. I had spent a year and a half blaming myself in quiet ways, wondering what I had missed, what I had done wrong, why something that had felt so solid had crumbled so completely. And now I knew it had not crumbled. It had been dismantled. There was a difference, and that difference, strange as it sounds, was a relief. I had not been blind to something real. I had been deceived by someone skilled. That distinction gave me back something I had not realized I had lost. A trust in my own reading of things, in my own judgment, in the part of me that had known something was wrong but had been told, by the very person causing the wrongness, that everything was fine. I started to listen to that part of myself more carefully. I made changes that were slow and non-dramatic, but that felt essential. I was more honest with people about what I needed. I stopped performing ease when I felt strain. I stopped giving my trust ahead of the evidence. I stopped staying long past the moment when something stopped feeling right. These were not dramatic transformations. I did not become a harder person. I did not become someone who expected betrayal everywhere. I just became someone who required people to be consistent over time rather than trusting them at the introduction and backfilling from there. That felt like wisdom, not damage. About 8 months after the shower, a mutual connection I had not been in touch with for a while reached out to tell me that Daniel and Mara had announced the birth of their daughter. The announcement was on social media, which I had long since unfollowed from both of them, but this person thought I should know. They were not trying to be cruel. They just thought they were being informative. I thanked them. I thought about the baby for a moment. A daughter. Growing up between two people who had begun with betrayal and who, whatever they felt for each other, had built their foundatio. And on something broken. I hoped she would never have to think about that. I hoped she would just grow up loved. That was a genuine hope. Not ironic, not performed, I actually meant it. I felt no warmth for her parents. But children are not their parents' choices. I put my phone down and went back to what I had been doing, which was preparing for a work trip. A conference in another city. Something I had put effort into and was genuinely looking forward to. My life had kept going. That was the part no one thinks to mention in stories like this one. Everyone wants to know about the confrontation, about the invoice, about the card, about what was said and what was not said and who said it first. But the real thing, the real ending, is just that life kept going, that I kept going, that the thing that had once felt like it would define my story turned out to be just one chapter in a book that had a lot more pages. I am not in touch with Mara anymore. I have not spoken to Daniel since before the breakup. I have built new friendships that do not come with the accumulated weight of someone else's debt to me. I have trusted people carefully and had that care returned in kind. I have done work I am proud of. I have traveled to places I had only planned to go to with someone else and found that I was good company for myself. I am not going to tell you I am over it completely. That would be a lie designed to make the ending feel neater than it is. I still have moments where something small, a shared Google Drive notification, a gray suit at an event, a friend asking me how I am doing in a specific tone of voice, will catch in my chest for a second. Not long, but the catch is real. What I can tell you is that I carry it differently than I once did. I used to carry it as a question. What did I miss? What did I do? What was wrong with me that made the people I loved most decide that using me was easier than loving me honestly? Now I carry it as an answer. Nothing was wrong with me. I was loyal. I was generous. I was trusting. Those are not flaws. Those are qualities that a specific kind of person will abuse if you let them. And the lesson is not to stop being those things. The lesson is to make people earn them over time. I know who I am now in a way I did not know before. Not because I was tested. Not because I came through something. But because when the ground fell away, I found out I knew how to stand anyway. That is the part I want you to hold on to. Not the betrayal. Not the invoice. Not the confrontation or the card or the way Daniel's call showed up on my screen and I declined it without a second thought. Hold on to this. The person who tried to erase me from her story did not get to decide whether I mattered. She just decided she no longer deserved to be close to something she could not value properly. And I moved on. If you have ever been the person who kept showing up for someone who was quietly taking from you, this one is for you. If you have ever mistaken your patience for weakness or your loyalty for naivety, I want you to hear this. Those things were never the problem. The problem was who you gave them to. Bella did not need to become harder. She needed to know the truth. And once she had it, she was steady enough to carry it without breaking. If this story stayed with you, leave a comment below and tell me, what is the one thing Bella did that you would have struggled to do yourself? And if you know someone who needs to hear this right now, share this with them. They might need to know that grace and power can exist in the same person.